right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Dharma Digs podcast, a podcast in pursuit of purposeful living. As always, I'm your host, Taylor Winchester, and I'm extremely grateful that you've chosen to take a little bit of time out of your day and stop by and listen and tune in to this podcast. So thanks for being here. If you are new to listening to this podcast, I appreciate you as well, but would love for you to go back and check out some of the other interviews and conversations I've had with past guests, and or just some of the solo digs. And for a little bit of a reintroduction, this podcast is really built around the idea of conversations pertaining to the creative arts and creative industries, but really more so about purpose and finding purpose within the things that we do for work and play and joy, and ultimately what it is about those things that we do in a creative process that bring us joy. And in this conversation today features with Tom Shaw, an old friend from Wilmington, North Carolina, from my days back down in the coastal area. It was a fun conversation, and for those that are not familiar with Tom, he is a really great dude, which you'll soon find out yourself once you listen to this. But he's a fellow musician, somebody that's worked in and around the music industry, supporting some of the live shows that happen down in the Wilmington market. But most recently, he's really dove into utilizing his graphic design skills to turn his passion for music into a screen printing company. And he's produced some really amazing work and unique show posters for the likes of Humphreys McGee, Green Sky Bluegrass, and quite a few more, a lot of bands, Big Something, a lot of bands in that kind of jam band and Americana scene. And so he's well versed in the Wilmington music scene and has done a lot to help that scene grow, which is a really cool community down there. So I really enjoyed this conversation with Tom. We talk a little bit about his recent dive into fatherhood, but also into kind of how he puts his passion in the midst of his work with his creative side. So without further ado, let's dive right in and let you hear a little bit more from Tom himself. So here we go. Thanks again for being here, everybody. If you have a few minutes before we transition over there, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button on these podcasts, wherever it is you're consuming them. If you're on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel. If you're on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is you're getting this, just please follow and or come follow me along on social media. So thanks for being here today. And yeah, here we go. Let's get into this combo. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Dharma Digs podcast, and I'm super stoked. Tom Shaw, thanks for being here today and joining us.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, taking a little bit of time out of your extremely busy schedule, being a recently new father. Congrats on that, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, man. So you and I, to kind of give a role in here, we met in my days back in Wilmington, which were many years ago now. Feels like eons ago. Well, also it feels like yesterday to some degree. But playing music. And I think we kind of crossed paths really like right as I was leaving town. So we didn't get to hang out a whole lot back then. But I've obviously kept in following kind of all the stuff you've led on to do there in the Wilmington market. And I did a little introduction, but why don't you just kind of give everybody your own little 60-second elevator pitch on what Tom's up to these days and kind of what you got going on.
Sure. Yeah. So I technically still have a day job doing graphic design, and I'm self-employed doing graphic design. And my self-employed graphic design kind of goes two ways. I call it corporate, but I do a lot of work for like small businesses, like branding, logos, things like that. I do the same for musicians as well. And then I also do like screen printed concert posters and things like that for some of the national touring musicians. A little bit of like t-shirts and stuff as well, but mostly posters. Kind of like if you go to a concert, whenever we get concerts back, you go to the merch table, they'll have CDs, they'll have t-shirts, they might have vinyl records. And at a lot of the shows, not all of them, but a lot of them, they'll also have like a limited edition poster. And to me, that was just always like a cool piece of merchandise. I decided to get into it when I realized that being a graphic designer, and having a few ties in the music industry, I was like, if I could just teach myself how to screen print, I can probably get like some small jobs doing this and kind of do it on the side for fun, whatever. Well, I did that, kind of built a portfolio up, and it went a lot further than I expected it to. And I've gotten to work with a lot of my favorite musicians, which has been really awesome. Yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at now.
Yeah, so super cool. So I think we kind of crossed paths or recrossed paths last year when I actually hit you up, knowing that you had been doing a lot of that kind of poster work for one of my clients up in the Abingdon, Bristol, Virginia area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did great work. So yeah, if there are any listeners out there that have a small business, be it corporate or be it arts and creative side of things, and you need some graphic design, Tom is definitely a man to call. So, are you still playing music any of these days, or?
Not really. So once COVID hit, everything kind of shut down. And then in the summertime, I started linking up with a couple buddies of mine and playing like pool parties, like socially distanced at a pool, like in a neighborhood. And that was fun. But really, no, I've not played. I'm looking at my guitar in front of me right now. I feel so bad. I'm not sure what the last time was that I picked it up.
Nice.
Actually, I take that back. I've been playing it a little bit for my daughter, here and there. But as far as like gigs go, playing in a bar, playing in a club, I think it's been, God, probably almost 2 years at this point, which is really sad.
Yeah. And what was that most recent project that you?
It was called Medjool Dates.
That's right. Yeah.
And it was kind of a spin-off of the old band I used to play with, which was called Dubtown Cosmonauts. But it was kind of funny. It was really just an excuse for us to get together and like jam in front of people at a bar. Like we didn't practice at all. We would all just show up. The shows were like 75 to 80% complete and total improvisation, but we all played music together for so long that we just kind of had that connection still, where we could kind of wing it and sort of pull it off. But yeah, it was a very loose improvisational jam band is how I would put it.
Yeah, I'd say our tastes have always been similar in styles of music in that regard, and definitely leaning into the improvisational style of stuff versus, not that they're the well thought out and I was going to say choreographed, but I guess that's more of a dance term. Yeah, those tunes that are well written and thought out are cool too, but yeah, there's something to be said about just kind of getting up there and jamming and yeah, obviously that under these circumstances we don't have that opportunity near as much as we used to, but and so I don't remember if it was an interview I read of yours or something, but I remember you talking about that was kind of like you mentioned and alluded to earlier with what pushed you into the graphic arts realm of at least within the industry of music, was the realization, to your point, like you don't want to be on the road, you're not going to kind of create the lifestyle that you want out of trying to play music professionally, and that's what led you down the show or the show posters. Kind of staying relevant in the industry to a degree, but also having the performance stuff to do when you want to around town.
Yeah, pretty much. I kind of pulled away from the band I was playing with in probably 2014 or maybe 2015. I had a day job, and so I was working 40 hours a week, and then getting in a car or a van and driving around North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and playing gigs, and then coming back and going right into work. And it was just too much, and something had to give, and I needed to pay bills. So I stuck with the day job.
Yeah. Now, and for a little while that day job was, I was gonna say, for a little while the day job was, weren't you working at the Penguin, the radio station down there for a little bit?
I interned there. Okay. It's funny. I'm wearing one of their shirts right now.
Yeah.
I owe Bogun so much for everything he's done for me over the years. But I interned there when I was in college. That's how I met Bo, who's the general manager at the Penguin. And I've always been in close touch with him. And we've actually been working together a lot more recently. But he was basically my foot in the door to making concert posters for bands, because he's the guy who brings all the shows through Wilmington.
Yep.
So basically, when I had that realization, I wasn't playing music anymore. I needed some sort of creative outlet. I've always loved to collect the concert posters. So I remember texting Bo, sitting in a parking lot, and I texted him, and I was like, if I just start sending you like designs for concert posters, would you mind just sending them to like band management and just being like, we'll cover all the costs. You don't have to buy them or anything. We'll just split money after the show. And he was like, yeah, sure. And so I was like, okay, cool. At this time, I didn't know the first thing about screen printing, but I designed a 3-color print for the band Dawes, and I sent it to Bo, and he sent it to their management. And like 2 hours later, they come back. They're like, yeah, go for it. So I'm like, oh shit, now I've got to figure out how to screen print. So I go on the internet, I buy like a do-it-yourself screen printing kit. Luckily I had like 2 months until the show.
Nice.
So I put the DVD in, and it's talking about how you need to have like a dark room basically to burn these screens. And so I'm like sitting in my house trying to figure out how I'm going to make a dark room. So I come to the conclusion that I can only do certain parts of the process at night, which I still do to this day. I have to wait for the sun to go down to like coat and burn my screens. And basically I farmed it. I pushed it through. If I go back and look at those prints now, like, oh my God, the registration is so terrible. Like I think I made 100 of them, and I whittled it down to an edition of 30 for that show that like weren't so terrible that I couldn't sell them.
Right.
So I show up at the show with 30 of them, and we ended up selling them out that night, which was pretty encouraging.
Yeah.
And so like the first few prints in my portfolio, that's what I did. I would come to Bo with a design. He would send it to management. If the bands approved it, I would go ahead and print it. I think 2 other bands that was with were Shovels and Rope and Green Sky Bluegrass, and then Jason Isbell, which are all bands that I love to listen to. Like it was like blowing my mind at the time. Like, how am I getting to work with these bands? Like,
right.
what, I felt like I was cheating somehow or something. But once I had that portfolio built, then I started getting calls and emails from like other bands, wanting stuff done for shows all across the country. So it started with like Greenfield Lake and Brooklyn Arts Center shows here in Wilmington, and now it's, whatever band playing at whatever venue, which is, it's pretty crazy looking back on it.
Yeah, that's super cool. And I mean, that's a good segue into like the question that I ask everybody that comes on this show is, within that kind of, and this doesn't have to be specific to your poster, kind of the poster work, but the creative process in general. But how do you kind of quantify, or what do you use to define a sense of purpose within that kind of creativity? And obviously there's different angles again that you could take with the corporate background you have on kind of just the general graphic design for business, but then obviously the show and kind of that community. I think that's probably why you wanted to stay in touch with it to some degree. But talk a little bit about what, when you do those short runs, you sell them out, how does that make you feel, and where does that quantify into some type of like feeling of sense of purpose within doing it all?
Yeah, it does. It definitely gives a sense of accomplishment. And I think I should also note that I went to college as a business major, a marketing major. So when I'm making these, it's definitely like a creative outlet for me. And it keeps me involved in the music industry, which I love. But I also kind of realized that for the band that's commissioning me to make these, they're buying merchandise for me, which means they want it to sell. They need to make money off of it, basically. So while I'm creating, I'm definitely keeping in mind that I guess it's kind of a 2-part thing. One, the band wants them to sell, so it needs to look cool. It needs to appeal to people. And 2, the people that are buying it, I want them to want to hang it on their wall. So I try and make things that are kind of aesthetically pleasing. I don't want to say like to the masses, because I don't think that's the right term. But something that I feel like, people, a good number of people could see taking home and putting in a frame and putting on their wall. I've got a lot of art on my walls. I also have 3 portfolio books full of posters that aren't on the walls. And it's not that I don't like the art. I just collect more than I can hang, basically. But it's definitely, it definitely is something I think about when I'm designing, is that, I want people to hang this. and I want the band to make money off of it, because if they do, then I've helped them out, and it could potentially help me get another job with them.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I'm with you. I mean, I think you're accomplishing that. I mean, looking at the art that's on your website and all the posters you've done. I mean, obviously, kind of you had to create it, or the whole screen printing side of things kind of fell in your lap. Not really fell in your lap. I mean, you pursued it to get it, but that was a really cool story, by the way. But yeah, I would say, like, even just looking at the community that you've built around your artwork, I think it's fair to say that you should be very proud, you know. And I'm stoked to see all that you've done with it too. I mean, for the folks that are listening, I mean, you may or may not be tuned into like the poster world, or especially within the jam band scene. It's a really big deal for a lot of people. And, you know, I've seen your name thrown around, and you've done some shows with some like folks that have been kind of like on this pedestal for many years in that game. So, you know, kudos to you for hitting that, and like, you know, jumping head first in, you know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it. I feel like I've got to thank social media for that as well. It connects everybody.
Yeah.
And it's, without it, I wouldn't have done anything more than a couple shows at Greenfield Lake or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking to somebody earlier today, and just, you know, you can kind of weigh the pros and cons of social media and what it's done to our society. And we won't go down that rabbit hole today, but yeah, sidestepping a little bit. I know you talked about this, but you obviously do some stuff for businesses that aren't strictly music related. And I was looking on your website, like you've worked with organizations in Colorado and Asheville. I mean, you're all over the place. So is that also coming from most of those clients coming from connections you've built through the music industry, or is that just from word of mouth online?
I think it's a little bit of both. I feel like I feel like the music industry work kind of gets my name out there, and then I don't know if it's people visiting my website that see that I also do that stuff, that then reach out. Or sometimes it can just be like friends of mine, or just like mutual connections between people that link me up. I'm also, I'll get tagged by people on Facebook when someone says they're looking for a graphic designer, and I just, I've got like I might have like a paragraph pitch that I can send them, and hopefully it gets them to look at my site and then reach out if they want, to hire me. But I feel like it's kind of connected. But like I said, I feel like the gig posters get my name out there, and then once that happens, then I do kind of find the corporate stuff coming in. Whether it's like a collector, he or she might have a day job, and that company needs a new logo, or they need some event graphics made or something like that, or some internal documents. It can be all sorts of stuff, and they'll be like, oh, I know this guy, and then send it to me, which is always really cool. It's kind of crazy, man. It just like, it kind of comes out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Like right when I think I'm caught up and I don't have any I don't have any freelance work to do, something else drops in my lap, which
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for, especially at the beginning of this year, not knowing what that was going to be like. I'm thinking we might go back into 2008, 2009,
Yeah.
where you just couldn't find work anywhere.
Well, I think that's a true testament, though, to, the whole tying back into the word Dharma and the sense of purpose. Like, I truly believe, and in some of like my recent dives into meditation and this new practice that I'm working on, a lot of that is like, you kind of have to, if you're pursuing what it is that you feel is your calling and what you're supposed to be doing, then those things tend to happen. Like it shows up for you just as much as you're showing up for it, and you're putting it out there into the world. So that's kind of a testament to, obviously, like, you're on the right path. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing,
Mm-hmm. I feel like I am.
Yeah.
I mean, they say if you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life, and that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah.
My wife, she works in clinical research, which is, there's aspects of it she's passionate about, but like, for me, like, I have a hard time doing work that I don't fully enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of graphic design is, it kind of blends, marketing and advertising, which I am passionate about on the business side of things, with like the creativity of making art. Whether it's a concert poster or whether I'm designing, a magazine ad for somebody or something like that. So it's nice to be able to be creative every day and make a living off of it.
Yeah, for sure. Not everybody can say they can do it. So now I know at one point we talked, you were considering, like, is there still a potential path or desire to kind of go all in on T Shaw designs and escape the corporate or day job kind of side of thing, or not to blow up your
Um,
spot if any of your coworkers are listening to this, but
no, I think there could be potentially. It would just have to make sense. The company I work for is really cool in that I get a lot of flexibility with my day job. I work from home. I get to set my own hours. So I can. It's just super flexible. And then the benefits and everything that come with a salaried position. It's tough to walk away from that. But if things just got so busy on the other side to where it made up for the salary and the benefits, and if I went and took out a calculator and everything and realized I could do it, I would do it.
yeah.
And things are growing for me, which is great. So as long as I don't plateau, I could see that happening. I don't want to put a timeline on it, but we'll see. We'll see how the next year,
Yeah.
2 years go.
If 2020 has taught us anything, there are no guarantees. So
True. Yeah.
Well, cool.
Very
Well,
true.
let's kind of segue into what I call segment 2. And you mentioned obviously your recent addition to the family being your daughter, and
Hmm.
I'm sure that has been quite a bit of a change up, not only in just like your day to day routines, but I can only imagine not having any children myself or going through that process, like the sheer amount of just kind of feelings and energy that come from going through that process. So, how's that shift been so far?
It's been interesting to
Yeah.
say the least. So I've got my wife's on maternity leave until the new year. When she's back to work and I'm working, I have no idea how we're going to do this. Sleep, uh, sleep longer than 4 hours is a thing of the past right now. And everybody says that changes and eventually they start sleeping through the night. And I just can't wait for that to start happening.
Yeah.
I think her record so far is maybe 1 or 2 days. She's done like 5 or 6 hours.
Wow.
But yeah, it's been a big shift. But it's been great having Krista. I try not to keep her with the kid all day long, but I'm still working 2 jobs essentially. So she understands that. I can hear the baby crying
Oh
downstairs
no.
right now.
Oh no.
So yeah. But something's got to give in January,
Yeah.
whether it's me taking like dialing things back a little bit, or the baby figuring life out and being cool with just like relaxing in a chair for a few hours at a time or something. But I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been fun. It's cool to see, like, she just started smiling last week, which was really cool. And you can kind of like coax and be like, "Are you smiling?" And
Yeah.
she'll like do this like big grin. She can't quite control it yet.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see that. And I feel like she's just looking less like a newborn baby and more like a little girl every day. It's just, yeah, it's really fun to watch so far.
Yeah, and it's so early on. I mean, she's 2 months old, so like
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
that is going to happen probably faster than you want it to, from what everybody says. So,
Yeah.
well, that was cool, and also like following you online, the fact that she was born on Paul Simon's birthday, and I know you did a nice little ode to Paul because of that, right? Is that how that
I
played out?
did. Yeah. I was so excited when I realized that. Because Krista and Paul Simon's like, I'll say he's probably my favorite singer songwriter. I've got a lot of favorites, but I think I would have to say he's number one. Even before she was born on his birthday. But I remember being, they move us out of like the delivery room and into like you're chilling with your baby room now in the hospital. and I opened my phone up and I get on Instagram and I saw a post that said something about Paul Simon's birthday, and I had to like look it up real quick, and I was like, Krista, she was born on Paul Simon's birthday, and I was so excited about it. So yeah, I had to make something. I started designing that in the while we were still in the hospital. It was like a quick kind of burst of inspiration. But yeah, I'm very, very excited. I want to try and get one of those prints to Paul and see if he'll like sign it to
Oh,
Vivian.
yeah, that would be cool.
I don't know if I'll be able to pull it off, but I'm definitely going to try.
I'm sure there's probably some ways that between the resources that you have and network, it'll probably come to fruition at some point, you know. So
I hope so. I did a little research. He's got a daughter who's she seems to be like she's got a music career that's starting to bud now. So I was thinking about trying to reach out to her through like Instagram or something like that and being like, hey.
yeah, I'm sure Bo
You,
has a relationship with some management team that has some connection too. So maybe you can
yeah,
call in
yeah.
another favor from Bo, but
I know. It would be like somebody Bo knows.
yeah.
Bo knows someone who knows Paul Simon's manager.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll make it work.
Yeah. Well, that is cool too, and I don't want to jump back too much, but like obviously Bo's done a lot of really good things for the music scene in Wilmington, and it's cool that it's cool to see you still involved. I mean, with looking back when I was down there and we were all in school at UNCW, and kind of to see how much, I won't say that I mean, it has changed, but like what an impact that the folks that I was down there like kicking around playing music with, these folks like yourself are still down there kicking ass with, you know, putting together really cool shows and experiences for the community. And I think that's a lot of the reason I think that I've loved doing music and events in Charlotte, is because it's literally like providing experiences for people that they may otherwise in Wilmington, that people weren't used to shows. They weren't going to get shows like that if it weren't for folks like yourself and Bo. So that's super cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's all Bo's built it up completely.
Yeah.
Before he really got things going, it was all the big bands came through Myrtle Beach and played House of Blues.
Yep.
And then there was like some contractual thing, like stipulation, where if bands played House of Blues, they weren't allowed to play Wilmington.
Yeah. That whole radius
because it's
clause
within 100 miles or something like that. But now it's like they come to Wilmington over House of Blues because Greenfield Lake is just an incredible amphitheater. He like pretty much any show that comes through there sells out. We got like a 7,000 person venue being built downtown. So hopefully we'll start getting some of the bands, that you'd see at like Red Hat in Raleigh or, whatever the Charlotte equivalent is. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Some of those kind of like, not quite stadium shows, but like bigger than like your Greenfield Lake show kind of thing.
Yeah, that's only a matter of time. I think it's funny because like now the Live Nation's like, shit, we can't do stuff in Myrtle Beach anymore because Wilmington's so cool. So how do we work with those folks out there? But yeah, it's great for the city. I mean, obviously some folks might not like it because it brings more traffic, but I mean, from a business perspective, that's helping everybody in the community, small businesses and all that jazz too. So
yeah, it really is. And I think what a lot of people don't realize, they think of Live Nation as like the evil corporation that, higher ticket prices, more expensive beer and things like that. But the flip side of that is when you're using a company like that to bring the shows into town, they have access to so many more bands, and bands are more willing to come to a promoter like that than they are somebody that they, may not have ever heard of before, because they know that if Live Nation is backing the show, things are going to go smoothly, or at least hopefully they're going to go smoothly. Yep. So I look at Live Nation coming into Wilmington as a good thing. It could bring higher ticket prices and things like that. But it's also going to bring a lot more talent through town.
Yeah. Yeah, versus driving to Raleigh and paying the price there plus the travel cost, you're going to have it right there in your backyard more than likely.
Exactly. So, yeah, you don't have to get a hotel anymore. You don't have to, burn a tank of gas going up and down in 4 hours of your time. So
yeah, I fought that fight when I was, working Live Nation here in Charlotte. It was right after the Fillmore and the Uptown Amphitheater had opened up, and I was the lone, sans maybe the manager of the box office, but like everybody else was here from out of town that worked there. So like, of course, Fillmore was getting like the worst rap in Charlotte, but I see both sides of it. I mean, I totally understand the concern of ticket and beer prices, but there are so many other things that the average person that doesn't see the back end of the business industry of the industry don't possibly get. So
yeah, yeah.
well, to jump back over to Paul Simon, I pulled this. This probably isn't like the tune that I would have normally jumped to, but I pulled an excerpt of lyrics only because you just had Vivian, your daughter, and the fact that she was born on Paul's birthday as well. And so I pulled this excerpt from Father and Daughter, the tune written by Paul Simon, and it's trust your intuition. It's just like going fishing. You cast your line and hope you get a bite. And I think about that. I'll read it one more time for the listeners because I probably read that fast, but trust your intuition. It's just like going fishing. You cast your line and hope you get a bite. And I kind of think about the story you just told about how you fell into the whole screen printing game. You know what I mean? Like, you have to kind of like trust your gut and put it out there and see what the universe gives back to you. But, you know, what do you think about, and I don't know if that song has ever had any meaning to you. It doesn't really, when I was reading the rest of the lyrics, it doesn't really feel like it ties into like Paul saying why he's so happy to have had a baby girl or anything. But what do you think of when you kind of think of Paul's lyrics and maybe those in particular?
I think that song definitely, has more meaning to it now to me, obviously. But, I kind of read through the lyrics and I listened to that song a couple times. Obviously I was familiar with it beforehand. But I feel like the whole song, he's just kind of reassuring his daughter that he's going to be there for her. And he's, giving her little bits of advice kind of through. And that was one of them, is just to kind of trust your intuition. But what I love about Paul is that he's a great storyteller, and his songs are often like very literal and tell a lot of them tell a very linear story. But then when you go back and like really dig into them, you're like, wow, there's like a lot more to unpack in this. And I feel like comparing intuition to fishing is brilliant. I'm a fisherman as well. Because you do really have to trust your gut. If you just go into the ocean and just cast a line out, like you're probably not going to catch anything. But you've got to kind of look around and use your context clues and trust your intuition on like where there might be some fish. And to tie it into my artwork, I feel like that those lines tie in there as well. I've got to trust my intuition about something that when I'm presenting artwork to a band. I need to make something that I think that they're going to like. And the same thing goes, I need to make something that I think that their fans are going to buy, so that, it's worth their time to hire me for it. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I've got on that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, you're right with his lyrics in general. I was reading through quite a few different tunes just because I try to like find something that's going to be relative. And obviously the father and daughter song was like a no-brainer, but I also didn't want to only take the easy way out. But a lot of the other ones I was reading is kind of like you're saying, like there were some really cool stories, but I didn't how to tie it into all of this conversation didn't jump out at me. But that is cool. And I really, if I can ever help, I don't know that I have any relationships. Bo's probably gonna have more than I would. But if there's anything I can do to give you a leg up on getting those to Paul, I'm all for it, because that would I feel like we're putting it out in the universe, so it's gonna happen at some point.
I know. I'll have to follow up with you if and when it does.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, let me know.
Yeah.
Well, cool. We'll move it on to like another quote that I sent you. As I mentioned earlier, we're both really into similar styles of music, specifically the improvisational style. And I think it's fair to say that one of both of our favorite bands would be Phish, and obviously Trey Anastasio, being that we've both been guitar players. And I know I've seen videos of you like learning a lot of his parts in the past on the guitar and kind of sharing those. So I know you're a big fan. But a lyric I pulled from a recent interview that I actually happened to be reading of his, and it made me think about you because of your love for Phish, and your presumed love of Phish, I should say.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I sent it over to you, I was like, well, I pulled this Trey quote because, I mean, it's Trey, but yeah, let me read this so the listeners have some context here. But again, this is from a Relics interview, which I will include the link in the show notes. But Trey says this: in my experience, thinking about results and not about the joy of the actual connection doesn't go anywhere good. I think you can tell what kind of music was written to make money and what kind of music is an expression of human emotion, a cry for help, a joy or whatever. And I think that's super relevant to this conversation because obviously the art component of it, I think everything that Trey's talking about is not solely specific to music, but just in art in general for a lot of us. And then I mean, you've touched on it a little bit with the combination of finding that balance of like, hey, this needs to sell, but it needs to also be a true piece of art. So, what are your thoughts on that quote and maybe the whole improvisational component of it, but also just again, like trusting your gut and going and enjoying the process of doing whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah, I think from a musical standpoint, I know for me personally, like I played in a few bands, and some of them, one of them in particular was very, it was not improvisational, and I just didn't enjoy it, and it was very short lived, but it was very like chorus or verse chorus whatever, not a lot of room to really kind of loosen up and step out, and it was just I didn't enjoy it at all. And then when I talk about like Medjool dates, or even back when I was playing with Dubtown or Smooth Out back in college, like the goal with those bands when we were playing live shows, was to get the room moving, basically. So it was just like our goal was to release energy, get everybody in the room dancing, and basically let them have that energy release, and us have it as well, basically through being up there playing it. And I feel like it just felt so much more natural to me to not have like those barriers up of having to stay within like the lines of this music that I felt like was, I don't know if it was written to make money, but written to just too structured,
Yeah.
for my liking. I do like I'll say this, I do like structured music. I don't like playing structured music.
Yeah. I think I'm with you. I mean, from a songwriting perspective, sometimes if it's just you and a guitar, it's hard to be too improvisational to a degree, so it feels structured. If it's it's a 3 or 4 chord song and you just make it what it is, unless you have a loop pedal. Sometimes you can go places, but I was thinking also about that quote and how it can apply kind of to life and like an approach to life in general. And I think you've kind of touched on it with your art in the sense of the purpose side of it, but I'm the same way. Like too much structure feels a little suffocating, I guess, and like doesn't
Yeah.
feel like you can be yourself in some ways. And
Mhm.
maybe it's just because it doesn't leave that room like you're talking about, and that room to kind of be yourself or to expand upon whatever is happening at that moment, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And I think what we probably both find a lot of fun in that process or that side of it. Cool. Well, thanks for indulging on those quotes with me a little bit there.
Yeah, for sure.
Before we get into segment 3, I know you sent me some stuff on NC Nourish. We'll talk about that in a minute. But are there any? I meant to ask you this earlier, but like, what? And we'll have to exclude the recent Paul prints because they're, that would probably, I would assume that might be one of your favorites so far. But like, what are of the other artwork you've put out there? Like, what's really at the top of your list for the things you felt the best about, I guess, or love the most?
The first one that comes to mind is a print I did for Umphreys McGee when they came through Wilmington. When I wanted to make it special because obviously it was like a hometown show. So I sent their management two ideas basically, and one was just kind of like a typical uh, poster similar to other stuff that I've done, and then I had this other one. I felt like I kind of had to sell them on it, where I basically what I did was I screen printed. It was a 2-color screen print on an NOAA chart of the waters of like Wrightsville Beach in Wilmington. So it was like a local like nautical map basically, and then I screen printed this pirate ship coming through the opened up Wrightsville Beach Bridge, along with like the band name and all the concert info and stuff like that. But I also went into the map file itself, which I just downloaded from the internet, And they made me check to make sure that it was legal to do that first. So I did, and the Coast Guard said I could do it. So there.
Disclaimer.
But I like went in and like put in like, it said like soundings in feet, and I changed it to like soundings in and did like a couple other little like Easter eggs like within.
Nice.
I'm trying to think of what else I did. Like there was a compass in there, and instead of north, south, east, west, I did like UMPH and stuff like that. And so so I made these really unique looking screen prints for that show. And Greenfield Lake holds 1,200 people, and we sold 100 of them before the show even started. Like we sold out. Like everybody who basically, not everybody, but you know, like most of the people that were walking in were coming straight to the merch table and being like, I need one of those. Yeah. So it was really cool. I got to stand there and you know, basically watch them just like fly off the shelves. And I just thought it was a really cool piece of art. It was really unique. It didn't look like a lot of other gig posters look. Further down the road, it ended up winning like an award from like a poster site called Espresso Beans, which was cool. But yeah, that's the first one that comes to mind. I'm trying to think of if there are any others. I know working for early on, I think like my third poster was for Green Sky Bluegrass, which is you know, one of my favorite bands. So it was really cool to work with them, and their light guy's actually a good friend of mine from high school up in Pennsylvania. So it was cool to get to work with him, and like, you know, he and I, like, we kind of, you know, we just, I don't know, between high school and like, you know, a few years out of college, like we would talk here and there, but then all of a sudden I realized, wait, Lincoln's the light guy for Green Sky? Like how? So it was cool that like we both made our way into the music industry somehow. And now like he had an excuse to come to Wilmington and hang out, and we're both big fishermen. We both play music. So like whenever they come to town, he and I'll get together and like, you know, go fishing for a couple hours before the show starts and things like that. So it was definitely cool to work with them. And then I gotta say, working for Lucas Nelson was really cool because he's Willie Nelson's son, which is awesome. He's a great musician. But I collaborated on that with JT Lucchese, who is like a well-renowned poster artist, does a lot of work for Widespread Panic. And it's funny because his parents actually live like a mile down the road from me. So I didn't even realize that he's like hanging out down the road from my house like a couple weekends out of the month. So it was cool to link up with him, and we collaborated, and the show was on May. I should show it to you because the poster's right over here. I'm just going to do that.
Yeah. Let's see it. And for those listening, you should definitely go. It's tshawdesigns.com. And he's got a lot of his work is up there. Oh, there you go. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see that Luke and Nelson.
Yeah, sorry for the reflection and stuff. This is like a foil version, but basically like the show is on May the 4th. So, you know, May the 4th be with you. Yeah. And so we turned Lucas Nelson into Luke Skywalker with a guitar in his back.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And just went with like a whole kind of Star Wars vibe for it. And that was another one that you know, was, I think that one was gone before the show started as well.
Yeah, those are amazing.
But yeah, it's, you know, it's been cool. I think the coolest thing about it has just been, you know, like I've been collecting posters since I was in college, from all these artists that now I've like become friends with and done art shows with all over the country.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of crazy. Like, I'm like, how did I find my way into this?
Yeah. You know, that's what's really, that's what's really cool to see. I mean, from like, you know, from my perspective is to see the strides you've made in it, especially after hearing the story, how you kind of like, you did, you know, it wasn't like a long thought out intention. It was just like, hey, this is what I want to do. Let me try. And then boom, it's there. And then it grows. So if anything, that should be an encouragement for you listeners out there. If there's something you love and you want to try, go try it. Right.
Yeah. Seriously. Like I would have been happy just doing like 1 or 2 a year, you know, for some local shows or something like that. I just needed an outlet.
Yeah.
And now it's turned into a full-fledged business. Yeah. So
that's one of the cool things I really like on your website too, is like some of those process sets that you have. I mean, it's like, so talk a little bit about that. Is that literally the multiple steps within the process of creating the final product, and they get kind of each step, or what is that?
Yeah. So the way that screen printing works, from, you know, there's a few different ways to do it, but the way that I do it is I design the work in Adobe Illustrator. And the whole time I'm designing, I got to keep in mind, like, I've got to put each of these colors down one at a time. So I basically need to have, I try to keep the artwork to like 5 colors or less. In reality, you can screen print as many colors as you want, but the more you do, the more complex it gets. And doing it in my garage
At
and
night.
burning my screens in my kitchen, like, I'm not a professional print shop by any means,
Yeah.
but I enjoy it. So whatever. So what I do is when I start, each color run, I take one print and I set it aside. So you've got like just the first color, and then I'll start running the second color, and then I'll have a sheet that's just the first color, just the second color, and then I'll do it on the next one. It's just the first color, just the second color, and the third color. And then I'll throw, maybe it's a 4-color print. And then you've got like the fourth where it's like the entire image is there. And then I basically keep those as an archive. They're available on my site if people want to buy them, but I rarely make more than one set of that.
Okay.
And I've got so much paper. Like, I'm looking at literally, I've got so much paper sitting in my house that I'm like, why do I need to hoard all this stuff? I might as well just put it out in the universe and let other people enjoy it. So I put them up for sale. Cause I don't need them. I'd rather somebody else enjoy them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a unique thing. I just figured, it's a cool way to see. And a lot of people don't really understand how screen printing works. And I'll admit that when I started doing it, one of the main goals when I was like creating my Instagram page and creating my Facebook page and selling these posters at local concerts was making sure that people realize that like these are not printed off a printer. Like they're not, and people will come up and ask me and they'll see the videos, or like my dad, even like early on, it's like, why don't you just get them printed somewhere? I'm like, because then it loses its luster. It's like, it's not as unique anymore. So it's, I've definitely made a point to make sure that people realize that like, it's a handmade piece of art, in somewhat of like a production, manner.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and that's, I mean, as with a lot of things, the folks, if you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes it's hard to understand or appreciate the value. So thanks for shedding a little bit of that. But yeah, folks, you got to check out his website. I mean, I think you've certainly, holding yourself to a standard of like kind of combining the whole business mind with the art, but also putting unique art out there that will look good on walls is something you've totally accomplished. And I'm like you. I mean, most of the posters that I have been from shows I've worked from my days. And I've got more. I need to replace some of this stuff you're seeing up here, to be honest with you. But I have like posters that are just like stashed away that I haven't gotten framed yet. And but I need to add one. I need to look in and add one of yours to my collection too. So I'll have to dig in a little bit more on that. Well, I know you've got a lot going on, so I do want to move on to segment 3. We always ask about any type of nonprofit or social issue that maybe you want to talk a little bit about. And the point of that for me is that anybody that's listening is mainly to encourage them to get involved in some way with their own, whatever organization speaks to them. But obviously if what organization you want to shine a light on speaks to them, they can find a way to get involved. So you mentioned you've done some work with NC Nourish. You want to shine a little light on what you've done and maybe a little bit about them?
Yeah, it's NourishNC.
Or NourishNC, sorry.
So what they do is they supply meals and food to less fortunate kids here in Wilmington. I won't go into like all the logistics of how they do it, because I think they've actually got a few different ways that they do it. But basically, yeah, kids that that don't necessarily have food guaranteed when they're not at school, they give them food to like take home on the weekends and make sure that they're eating outside of that, the lunch that they're guaranteed when they're at school.
Nice.
So I've done it a few different ways. A lot of what it's has been more through like T-shirts and apparel rather than posters and stuff. But so I'm trying to think of the first time I worked with them was right after Hurricane Florence, which completely demolished Wilmington. Like Wilmington was an island for like a week. Like you couldn't, like we had to, I think we actually went up to Charlotte, and couldn't get back to Wilmington until the water went down, basically. And there were like rumors coming through, like, is there a road that gets back yet? And like, it was a mess.
Yeah.
But anyways, Wilmington got demolished. So myself and a couple other artists got together and made some shirts. And we wanted them to benefit local charities. So one of those local charities was NourishNC. So we sold these shirts and then, gave them a portion of the proceeds along with a couple other nonprofits here in town. But then more recently, I kind of had an aha moment. I want to say it was probably about a year ago at this point, but COVID messed things up, so I didn't get it going and as soon as I wanted to. Of doing I call it Wilmington Strong apparel, and Wilmington Strong was something that stemmed out of Hurricane Florence. It was crazy thinking back on how awful that was. So Wilmington Strong apparel, what it is it's apparel that's completely Wilmington made, with the exception of like the physical threading of the shirts. That's the only part of it that is outsourced from the city, from outside of the city. So I would design these shirts. Most of the designs are Wilmington themed shirts. It might have like a local landmark or something like that. And then I hire a local shirt printing company to print the shirts. And then we take those shirts once they've been printed and we sell them in local brick and mortar stores. So like locally owned businesses carry them, and the shirts benefit NourishNC. So you've got basically they're locally designed, locally printed, sold locally, and they benefit local charities. So basically I'm just trying to keep all the money in Wilmington.
Nice.
is my goal with that.
Yeah.
Just kind of stimulate our own economy and help our own people. So that's kind of been the main way that I've been involved with NourishNC there. Is just basically the donation. I guess I should mention each shirt that somebody purchases from the retailer feeds a local kid a meal and a snack. And the retailer still makes money on it. The shirt printer still makes money on it. I make a little bit of money on it, but it's not really about me at this point. It's more about helping everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's been really good. It's been very well received. I kind of had the initial launch of it. I want to say it was maybe in April or May. And things kind of, I wanted to do a fall line, but I also had a baby that was due on October 13th. She was due on the 12th. She came on the 13th. So basically it went to the wayside, and now I'm going to have a spring release instead. So I've got I've already made new designs and everything. I've got everything ready to go. I basically just need to like bring it all together.
Very cool.
And yeah, so I want to find some more local retailers and just kind of expand that and see what we can do to help feed the kids a little bit more.
Yeah, it's amazing. I meant to actually bring up, I saw the Wilmington Strong apparel stuff, and so people can buy online too, though, on your shop.
It will be online.
Okay.
Right now, technically, no, it's not online,
Okay.
but you can call. Like if you go to my website, there's a list of the retail locations, and you can call them and they'll ship to you.
Cool.
So you can purchase through them. You can contact me if it's easier, and I can tell you what each of the stores have to kind of help you narrow down what you want. Because each store, that's another thing, is each store has something different. I kind of keep it, I don't want them competing with each other.
Yeah.
So I let them pick what colors they want, pick what styles they want, whatever their kind of demographic of customers, tend to like. So each store has something different. It's not like there's one t-shirt that you can buy at 4 or 5 different stores. It's like, there's men's styles, there's women's styles, and there's all different colors of everything. And that's just going to get bigger in the spring. And I'm gonna also have an online store going as well. That's on my to-do list.
Yeah, we'll get Vivian working on that if we have to, right?
Seriously, we'll get her modeling. She can model onesies or something
Yeah,
like
yeah, no doubt.
that.
Well, yeah, super cool. I love the whole concept of the Wilmington Strong kind of, we'll call it a movement, an apparel movement, if you will. It's really cool that you're making the effort to kind of give back and really support the local scene in all ways, shapes, and forms there. So, well, cool, man. Well, thanks again so much for taking the time. I really appreciate you, and I know that the folks that are listening thus far, hopefully we'll get more ears eventually, but I think the people that have been tuning in will really enjoy this conversation. Most of them are music fans, just from knowing me in general, so they'll love a little behind the scenes of T. Shaw Designs and some of those relationships. But yeah, cheers, man. Thank you so much for being here. I'll make sure to link tshawdesigns.com. What is that, your handle for social if people want to follow you as well?
Yeah. I think it is. If you search that, it'll all just Google
I'll
it.
get
It pops up.
Google T. Shaw Designs, yeah, and I'll make sure to pull all those links and include them in the show notes if anybody's looking for them too. But yeah, thank you, Tom, for being here. Thank you, listeners, for listening and tuning in as always, and we will see you next week. Cheers.
Awesome, thank you.